So to get started on this major project, let's start by creating a new document. The size of our document is going to be the same as all the others. So 1920 by 1080 pixels. We'll say create. Going down to our animation timeline, let's set the frame rate for this one to be 12 frames per second. And for now, we can keep it at 100 frames, though if you want to add more, we can do that later. Also, let's make sure that we have auto blank frame selected so that every time we draw, it draws a new automatic blank frame for us. Now the first thing we want to do is to add our little background image. If we go up to Layer and down to Import, and let's do a Import Layer. I've given you a folder with a variety of just different color backgrounds that we can use. And if you look at them, they're all essentially the same. It's kind of just a blurry, simple little background. You can pick and choose whichever one you want. I'll choose this one and place it inside of here. Now, if we go over to our little Layers panel Docker, you can see that this is on its own individual layer. Let's click on it and drag it down so that it's on top of that background. This is going to become our new background we're going to animate on top of. Since we don't want to actually paint on this layer, we're going to lock it down, but keep it at 100% so that we can see it. Everything else will be done on layers that are above our area. Now, initially, the tool that we're going to use first is going to be our paintbrush tool. So with it selected, we've got our paintbrush tool. We're going to be creating a variety of different little critters that are kind of just swimming around inside of this. And we're going to use our little dot technique to be able to animate where they are and then to add on to them and make them into blobs or shapes or whatever you want. So the type of brush that we're going to use initially is just going to be our basic little brush at the very top. Later on, if you wanted to add more or do some different things, we can play around with some of these different ones. But to get started, I'm going to do this one. We do want to choose a color that is noticeable. Since I've got kind of a darker background, maybe for this one you'll want to choose a white or a lighter color of line so that you can see it as it's being drawn. You can change it up to be whatever you want. But for now, I'm just going to use this kind of as a starting point for my overall design. Also, as we got our brush, make sure your opacity is set to 100%. And since these dots are going to represent kind of living creatures, I'm going to increase my size and make it look like it's something a little bit more bigger and substantial. We want to fill up this area and have several little things swimming around, all at different speeds, all going different directions, maybe starting and stopping. Remember, with this technique, you can get them larger and smaller as if they're coming toward you. And you can even go back and draw little blob shapes around them so that it looks more like larger amoebas or different things like that. So jumping into here, let's go down to our timeline layer and we'll just kind of play around and do the first one. So I got layer 1 selected. Of course, we need to turn this into an animation layer by clicking on our first frame. And let's turn on onion skinning so that we can see the frames before or after. In my case, I'll turn off these before frames and just see the ones that are behind us. Now, as we've done before in previous ones, you can start off anywhere from here, but I'm going to start off with a simple dot and then move forward to the next frame and then have it move slowly throughout my design. Some things to also consider whenever you design this and have your dots and things move around is they don't have to start at the beginning or on your screen. They could actually start off your screen and move on to the little area, or they could start on screen and move off of your screen or off of the staged area. However you want to do it. Just remember to try to move things quickly or slowly, speeding up and slowing down, and moving in arcs as they do. So I'm going to do a simple little thing here, and because I want to show you another technique that you can do with your design. So we'll get it to move through here. And here we come towards the end. I'm going to have mine end off the screen. So maybe one more and have it just kind of placed off there. If we were to go back and to play it, So highlight all of my frames, hold down the Shift key, there we go. Hit play, you can see how it renders and moves around. Looking good. So there it is, kind of just set there, working really, really well for that. Now, the other thing that I can do is to play around with some of the blending modes and get it to show up or to blend in with the background. Since I've got this layer selected, one of the first things you can do for the entire layer, so I got this layer, is to simply drop the opacity of it. You can see by dropping the opacity, this makes this a little bit more transparent. And so now once it plays, whoops, now this is kind of a rendering issue, so maybe I have to go back and get it to re-render again. Let's see if I can get it to pick up. It may take just a second, but all of the different frames in this layer should eventually re-render as being completely transparent. Sometimes it just takes a little while for the Krita to pick up on it. Before I do anything else, let's go up to File, and I'm going to save this as, I'll call it Under the Microscope. And hit save. And now that it's done that, when I press play, you see it's updated the whole animation timeline and it's redoing it as completely transparent for all of those. That just adds a little bit of extra pop to the believability of it. Let's do another one, but this time change up our paintbrush and a few of the effects that go with it. So down in this layer, we can always lock it down so we don't accidentally draw on it. And if we go to our Layers panel, let's create a new layer by clicking on the little plus sign. This will be Layer 2. For our paintbrush, again, we can change up the color to be whatever you want it to be, as long as it's bright enough and nice to see. Maybe I'll do something a little bit more on the yellowish side. Some of the other paintbrushes that you can play around with include different ones that have different kinds of textures. And this is, again, the kind of thing that you just got to play around with it to see what you get. That's kind of cool because it has a nice fuzzy edge to it. I kind of like the look and feel of that one. Some of the other ones, like these are paintbrushes that look like that. Now that's really cool. One downside to this one is all those edges are going to be squiggling around as I paint with it. So this is one of those things that you can really play around with and do a lot with. I kind of like the look and feel of this guy, so maybe I'll do something with him. As with the others, I can start anywhere that I want, but let's start our first animation frame here, and of course turn on onion skinning. I'm going to get him to be over on this side. We'll start there, and we'll have him move across and move around and get larger and smaller maybe. All right, let's play that back. We'll highlight all of our stuff and see what it looks like as well. There we go. Okay, if I like that and the way it's moving, the other thing I can do is also play around with the timing of everything. Everything doesn't have to start exactly at the same time. If I wanted these to start or come in a little bit later, all I've got to do is to select all of my keyframes, hold down Shift, and then I can simply click and drag and move them down, and their starting time will be at a different time. So here you can see it'll start roughly half a second after the other one does. But now when it plays, excuse me, we need to select all of those frames as our starting point. So now you can see how it'll come in and go a little bit later. So even if you create new little drawings on here, you can have them not start at the first keyframe, but actually choose some frames a little bit later on in your animation timeline. The final thing that we could add to this are some of our more blob and bubble type little animated characters on this. Remember, with these, we always want to start off by practicing or getting an understanding of where everything moves along at. So we'll create a new layer. Let's lock down our current layer, make a new one. This new layer, we're simply going to draw a simple dot, and that'll be our guideline for the movement of our person. So the dot would be something like this. Maybe I'll make my brush size a good bit smaller since we don't really want to see it. We just want to get an idea of the pacing of everything. The other thing that your little blob people could do as you animate these is maybe they're moving along and maybe they break apart, and you could have them split into two different blobs, or you could have two different blobs merging together at some point and becoming one blob. The main thing is play around with it and have fun. We want to fill the screen and have everything set so that it looks like it's teeming with life and there's lots of little things going on inside of it. All right, so let's go ahead and select our first little keyframe. And remember, this doesn't have to start at exactly the beginning of your animation. So maybe I'll move over a couple of frames and we'll start at about a second in. So frame number 12. We'll create a new blank keyframe. So there it is set here. Turn on our onion skinning. And just to get the others out of the way, I'm going to turn off visibility for those layers. And let's simply draw off our guidelines for where this little guy is going to go. So maybe I'll start him here, and then we'll move over to the next one. All right, with that done, let's go ahead and select all of our frames. This is going to look so good. By the way, if you need to scale your timeline, this little icon here will let you drag in. That'll shorten everything up, and so I can see more of my timeline inside of the same area. This makes it a little bit easier to select all of those and then press play. There he goes, and he moves around this way. I'm liking the look and feel of that. Remember, if you need to slow this down any, you can always insert some blank keyframes anywhere. I think mine is okay, but later on we'll maybe go back and redo it from here. Now, since this is a guideline, we're going to lock down this layer. And if necessary, you can lower the opacity of it. It's not necessary always, but it just makes things a little bit easier to see. We're actually going to draw our blob on a new layer. So click the plus sign and create a new layer on top of layer 3. And then down in our animation, we'll select the first little keyframe, in this case right where it starts for the next layer below it. And we'll create a new frame for that one. Turn on the keyframe for it. We want to be able to see before or after hours, so make sure onion skinning is turned on so you can see all of those. As we've done with the others, you can choose whatever color you want this to be. So maybe I want this to be something that's a little bit more of a bright orange. And that looks good for that. And again, you can choose it to be a different kind of brush if you want to play around with more of a textured type of thing. For my case, maybe I want it to be something that I can fill in a little bit easier. So maybe not a soft edge, but more of a harder edge. I kind of like the look of that pencil, but I'll make it a little bit larger. We'll go with something like this. And if it helps, go ahead and zoom in. So this will be the starting point for my character. Ooh, too big. I think that looks good. So we'll draw off and get a starting point for its design. Finally, don't forget, if you need to turn on brush smoothing, you can have it be weighted or stabilized. I like to keep it weighted, and the distance at a pretty high number, around 200, tends to be pretty good. And then simply go through each frame and then draw your blobs frame by frame. But since my reference point is here in the middle, we want to keep our center point of our little blob right there in the middle too. And if it's off by a little bit, that's okay, simply because we want this to look blobby. So since this one's going to zip down through here, we'll have it stretch out. And then on the next frame, it turns back into a little dot. And so he's going to still be stretched out a little bit, but maybe not so much. It's kind of catching up to it. Now he's moving back around and drawn for this one too. Looks like I missed part of it. I'm liking the outline of this one because it looks nice and fuzzy, the way a little blob should look. And that's okay. That's what we want it to look like. We want it to look slightly fuzzy. So take some time, go through and carefully draw off each of your little blobs using this as a starting point. Remember, as it moves, you kind of want it to stretch in the direction that it's moving, especially if it picks up and starts to move much, much faster. So this one, I even had 2 little blobs, looks like. So it's going quicker and quicker, and those look good. Keeping roughly the same shape for each. Hey, maybe for this one, a little piece breaks off right here. So you see how he's stretched? He's got a little piece of him there. So now this piece can have its own little animated shape, and this piece can also maybe trail off a little bit too. He's starting to curve around a little bit. This one's going to get a little bit smaller every time, and eventually we'll let that disappear. Or maybe he kind of goes back into this. If I scrub over it, and that's looking good. So you can see how it fits to there. Okay, and then this one. All right, let's go back and test this. Now that we're finished, we can turn off in our layers panel visibility for our paint layer 3, or in this case, our little dot that was followed. We'll back up and loop our animation. And remember, if you get this little glitch, simply say cancel and it'll play through. Oh, I like that little dot part, and you can see how it moves relatively quickly. Maybe for my next one, I'll have some larger, more bombastic movements rather than so tight but all together. But so far, I like the look and overall. Now, I do want to show you one other little trick that you could try if you wanted to quickly fill in the area of your little amoeba. Now, this doesn't always work for everything, but if you've got a closed-in area like this circle, I'll zoom in on it. There's a tool that you can use to tell it to quickly fill in this selected area. This tool is located towards the middle of your toolbox, and it's called the Enclose and Fill tool. This allows you to select in a given area and fill it in as long as that area is closed off, the way our circle is. Now, when you do select it, pay attention to a couple of things. First off, it's going to fill it in based on whatever color you have selected. So since I have the orange, that's what it's going to fill it in as. The other thing you can do is to choose your enclosing method. By default, it's going to be the rectangle. So this means if I click and drag over an area with my rectangle, you can see how it fills it in that particular color. Now, in this case, I've also got a couple of other things to consider. For instance, so your closing method, if we scroll down, your target regions. Now by default, it's usually set to transparency. So let me show you what this looks like again. Click and drag over it, and wherever it sees transparent, 100% transparent pixels, that's what's going to be filled in. Now the reason why there's some fuzzy edges around mine is because my brush had some soft edges to it. And though it looks kind of transparent, there's still a few little pixels in there that it didn't get. And so that's why that fuzzy edge is not completely filled in as well too. If you've got a harder edge brush, this won't be a problem. Now, one thing you can change your target area to is to all. And with the target region selected, when you click and drag, this will get everything that has some sort of pixel to it, and it'll give it a nice hard edge. And so if that's what you want, and that's one way of quickly filling it in, definitely go for it. This will give you the ability to quickly fill in those regions. But the downside is you got to do this for every frame that you've got. So if I go to my next one, click and drag, it'll automatically fill those in. And it's kind of a quick and simple way of getting that look and feel. I kind of like the look that's going with this, so maybe I'll take just a moment and go frame by frame and fill all of these in with that solid color using this tool. Again, the tool that I'm using is this Select or Enclose and Fill tool, and then go over to your Tool Options docker, and then choose the method that you want. If the rectangle doesn't work well, then maybe you want to use the little lasso tool or the circular selection, ellipse selection tool. By the way, always keep your reference on the layer that you're working on. That way it doesn't look at some of the other layers and the information for it. And then play around with your target regions that you want. So from here, we'll go to the next one. Make sure it's all selected and filled in. All right, with that done, let's zoom back out. We'll select our areas and let's test it. Much better. Nice little blob shapes. And again, the other things you can do with this is play around with the opacity. Let's see what happens when we play around with the blending mode for these. So I've set my blending mode in my layers panel to be divide. And then when I play now, it gives me something that looks like this. And that's really cool. I like the look and feel of those. We can turn on visibility for our other layers too if you want. Let's see what that all looks like together. I even like seeing the little dot inside of my guy as he moves around. All right. So the goal for this is to fill up your entire area. Again, there's no set number, there's no set amount of time that you have, but try to let it be teeming with life. I would say you could easily fill this in with about 10 different things, and that would look really, really cool. They all don't have to start at the same time. They all don't have to end or take about the same amount of time on your timeline. So feel free to shift things around, let things go longer or shorter, however you see fit. The last thing that we need to do once you've finished your entire animation is, of course, we need to go to File and we need to save it, and we need to export the video. So for the sake of time, let's go up to File and down to Render the Animation. We do want to export this and render it as a video, same size, same frame rate. Change your Render As to be MPEG-4. That tends to be the best one. And make sure you've got the FF MPEG location and everything set up already to go. When we say OK, this will take a couple of seconds. But once it's finished, we should have a nice rendered video. All good. Make sure you knew where it was saved to. I've got mine on my animation camp. And here's our MPEG video. Ready to go for that. All right, best of luck on this.